One of the questions that I would say Craig and I get asked the most after 14 years of being in business together is how can you work with your husband, wife, boyfriend, girlfriend, whatever somebody is thinking about in their own mind? And we thought that today that would be a really fun topic to explore, having worked together for almost 14 years and still liking each other, I think, most of the time, with 3 children and a dog and all of the chaos that family life brings. So we thought it'd be a really fun episode to talk about working together, the pros, the cons, the highs, the lows, and any advice for anybody thinking that it might be a good idea to go into business with their partner. So welcome, Craig.
Thanks for having me, Laura.
So I thought we can kick us off by saying, what do you think is the best thing about working with your partner, aka me?
Um, I think the thing that we always wanted, and it was kind of the reason for starting Tag Digital was that freedom. And I think if only one of us had it and the other one was tied down to a job, it would have made our life a little bit more difficult. And I think we've seen over the last almost 14 years lots of upside to that. You know, we're able to take holidays with the kids without having to put in annual leave requests. Um, Things like that. We're able to get home for school assemblies and be there for that kind of thing, or first day of nursery. But I guess the flip side is when we go on holiday, we're always both contactable. There are times where we have to travel for work sometimes, and it's not always easy on the person that's left at home. But I would say on the balance of things, it's been completely worth it. And it's funny because when we talk about our kind of situation and our setup, so many people, their gut reaction is just, "Oh my God, I could never work with my husband or my wife." And I always laugh because actually, I think if you've got a pretty solid relationship, I bet you could. I bet you could figure out a way to do it. And there's obviously some kind of rules that you have to put in place, but I think more people could do it than what they think.
I think reflecting on it, yes, all those things for sure. And going back to the beginning, it was just kind of fun to hang out together and we would do some work and then we would like celebrate all of the little wins and go to the pub, and that was a really fun time, I think, when we kind of were very, very green and starting out. And then as the business has grown and probably we've matured or had a bit more sense of responsibility, I think the mutual understanding is very helpful. Like you can both understand maybe what's going on in a day, the pressures that somebody's under. Whereas if you're both operating in different spaces, there's a lot of explanation and context that's missing that could maybe add to some of those pressures. So yeah, I think somebody just kind of understanding where you're at and what support you might need is really helpful. And yeah, having shared goals that we can work towards for the family and for the business is a nice thing. But yeah, I think it means that you probably work harder than maybe you would in lots of other circumstances, and maybe you're both doing that. But yeah, I think the payoff is great, and it takes a lot of work. I don't think it's something that you can just expect to happen. A lot of communication, and you're probably more honest with your partner. I don't know because I've never had a business partner, but there's always a level, and there's always a level of respect, but maybe a different type of honesty, which I don't know if you would get with lots of other people, which can be a good thing because you're really honest and you move through things quickly, but it can be hard at times.
Yeah, I think probably to like expand on your first question, I think the motivations for doing it changed over time. So I think when we were 24, it was it wasn't much more than, oh cool, we could do this business together and that means we don't have to go get another job. Like that sounds great. We're free to do our own thing, and if we can make enough money to pay our bills that were tiny at the time, we didn't have any responsibilities, that's great fun. And then over time, it's like you say, it's like nice to share that kind of common goal. And then as we've had kids and we grow the business a bit more, we both have like a kind of shared vision of where we want to take the company and how we want it all to end and all this kind of stuff. So I think I think your motivations for doing it change, but it's nice to have that change with your husband and wife.
I think we've also known nothing else. I think like we both had like one job before we actually started working together. We were 24, so pretty much clueless, I would say, in the world of work at that young age. With very limited experience, and then we've kind of grown up together, which we've kind of experienced a lot of failures and a lot of great stuff along the way. But yeah, we've never known anything, so it doesn't seem that strange. Whereas it can seem quite strange to people. And then, what do you think is the worst thing about working together?
Um, Sometimes driving into work and having to listen to your podcast is annoying. I'm only joking, that's not bad. The worst thing, I don't know, I don't look at anything as like the worst thing, because to me, the alternative, working for somebody else, is the worst thing. So there's nothing bad. I mean, sometimes probably this is not even that bad. Sometimes probably we can have a disagreement on something at work and probably get a bit tetchier with each other than maybe you would if it was not your wife. Um, that's probably something that we could ask the wider team if they ever sense that sense that tension. But I don't know. There's nothing else really that jumps out at me that's worse.
Yeah, yeah. I think you end up, some stuff will come home. Everything comes home basically. Like
Yeah,
there's no divide. You're kind of, it's just all consuming. I think like a business like ours, which I don't see as a bad thing. Like I still absolutely love the company. I love what we do, and I'm still really energized about it. So I'm like maybe always happy to talk about work, and I would say you're maybe the one who's a bit more like, okay, enough. Like,
oh yeah, yeah. Probably that is maybe a difference that we have. But I would say sometimes the days are so busy. There's so much stuff happening, and then we get home and we have a couple of hours with the kids to do dinner and bath and bedtime, and that time's all chaotic. So sometimes, as annoying as it is, sometimes like 9 o'clock at night or 6 o'clock in the morning is when you have 15 minutes to actually talk about something. So in an ideal world, you say, oh, okay, we shut off from work at 6 o'clock and we don't talk about it again until the next morning back in the office. But that's just not realistic for our life, or certainly not the stage in life that we're at the moment. So yeah, in an ideal world, we would have dedicated time where we switch off, but we're so used to it now. That's just our life. It would be weird if we didn't have that. So I think it works.
yeah. I think we've probably evolved into quite a strict routine, I would say more so since having kids, because I think that's been the hard thing, like having 3 kids in 5 years and still trying to maintain a growing business is a lot of different pressures. So you're trying to like be there and present as a parent and still like lead the company and make sure that that's going well and everybody's happy and all of the challenges that come along there. And I think one thing that's maybe helped us with that kind of degree of sanity is we'll always get home, usually be home for like dinner, bath and bed with the kids, try and have like no phones and no kind of distractions and really be present for that time. Same thing like first in the morning. So we're there and we're available, and then we kind of pick up at night like the bits that we've maybe missed. And I feel like that works for us. It wouldn't work for everybody. But I feel like that brings a sense of order. And then we maybe have like an hour to watch something at maybe like 9 or 10, which for me anyway, feels like I can't stand the work-life balance question. I feel like that's really, really difficult with a young family and a growing business. I think you just have to do the right blend of things that work for you. And so I feel like that's quite a personal choice and that works well for us. So maybe having those routines and yeah, the flexibility, like you've got the flex to go and be at their sports things and be at their assemblies, but you've also got the discipline to pick up at whatever hour you need to do whatever is needed. So I think having that discipline plus flex means that you feel quite in control of, well, maybe wouldn't feel like a situation that's in control. Anything on the routines that you think you do that helps us as a couple or family?
I mean, I guess our routines are slightly different. So typically, I will get up and go into the office early. I like to be the first one in the office. So I'll go in and be early, and you might spend a little bit more time with the kids in the morning, and then we kind of swap in the evening, and I'll go home a bit earlier, and I'll kind of finish off dinner with them, and we'll kind of overlap in the evening. So our routines aren't exactly, I mean, they're pretty similar, but they're not exactly the same. You'll exercise in the morning, I'll exercise at night. Like we just try and kind of fit it in as best we can, and I think 99% of the time we do a pretty good job.
Yeah. Can you think of when there's been a disagreement that has kind of affected the personal side of things?
I mean, there's not anything that's jumping out at me at the moment. There's definitely things that we kind of bicker over, or we might say something to each other in a meeting that we know maybe nobody else notices, but we might notice it's got a little edge to it. And you'll get home and you'll be like, "Oh, I didn't like the way you spoke to me in that meeting," and you're like, "Oh, you're reading too much into it," or whatever. So there's little things like that, but I can't think of anything that's like one big issue we've fundamentally disagreed on.
Yeah.
Can you?
I think I was thinking about it. The one area where I think things get stretched is when you throw travel into the mix or like
Hmm.
a lot of late nights. And so probably I'm more on the like client side, networking side, speaking side, like a bit more visible, which
Hmm.
means that then there's more like events or like, I don't know, the occasional more travel than you would have. So it feels like then sometimes like the balance is off and the routine is off. And I feel like when we get into that space, that's when it can all feel a bit harder because like one of us is away and, I've been away a few times in the US this year and then you're just left. So even though you're like, well, it's only 2 days or 3 days, in real terms, it's maybe like 4 or 5 days because you're flying overnight and time differences and all of that stuff. So I think like things typically work quite well until then you kind of add in like the extracurricular. I think though we're both pretty disciplined about what we say yes and no to, and like travel, I'll go if I really have to be there, but also want the wider team to experience a lot of those things as well. And probably we say no to a lot of social things, I feel like, so we can kind of protect that time at home. But I would say that's when things feel a little more tense, probably with the travel.
Yeah, and I think that's actually changed. Probably back like maybe 2017, 2018, we would we would maybe both go do things like that. At the time, we only had one child, and it's much easier to get a babysitter for one child than it is for three. So it, we would maybe both go do that, and just over time, the novelty of going to America for 2 days or Dubai for one day, like it quickly wears off. You're nothing more than tired and spending time in airports and planes. So I think you're right. I think naturally you just do more of the client stuff, but also it's really good that we've got a team, a really capable team now that can do a lot of that travel for us as well. And the things that you do still go do, you make sure that they're kind of high value, important things, and it's completely worth continuing to do them. So I think it's fine. The travel's just kind of an accepted part of it, and actually it's a lot less than it used to be.
Yeah, no, that has definitely changed, I think, which has been great kind of post COVID. So moving on to our roles, do you think that we've kind of naturally fallen into separate roles and maybe like how did you see that evolving over time and do you think that's still easy to separate or do you think we get in each other's way?
Um, I would say like on the face of it, we're both kind of control freaks. So I would say occasionally there is like a clash on things. You're much more of a people person, and I'm probably the opposite. So I'm quite happy for you to be like the face of the company, and I just kind of remain in the shadows, Batman style. But
Feels ominous.
but yeah, I think it's just naturally kind of happened. You're very good at selling a really kind of friendly, bubbly personality and you're perfect face of the company, whereas I'm much more of a kind of logical, sensible thinker, organizer type mind. and I quite like working internally with our team at Tag Digital, and you like working externally with clients and all that kind of stuff. So I think just naturally our personalities mean that we have kind of leaned into different areas, and I think now it's pretty clear you wouldn't. There's certain things that fall on my plate, and you wouldn't touch them, and vice versa. So I think it's not something that we ever sat down, I don't think, and said, right, this is your job description, don't touch anything else. This is yours, don't touch anything else. It's just happened over time, and probably it's happened based on our personalities and also just where our kind of strengths and weaknesses lie.
Yeah, no, I think that's true. And I think we probably do have a bit of like, these are the decisions that one of us owns. And I love it if somebody else has a decision I don't need to make. Like, I think, yes, probably we are both a bit controlling, which is maybe where we clash sometimes. But once the team has kind of evidenced, I've got it, I'm good, I'm fine, I'm very happy to empower them to do it and trust them to do it, which I feel like you're the same. It just takes a bit of time for you to kind of see that all coming through. But it's amazing to see we've got such a capable team now who can just go do stuff. We don't even know what's happening, which is, would have been really hard to imagine like maybe 7-8 years ago. So that's a huge, hugely exciting part of the company. And so do you think working together has uncovered any surprising talents or hidden strengths that you maybe hadn't noticed or wouldn't have noticed if we were not working together?
No, is my my gut feeling. Like I think all the strengths that I see in your performance at work are probably things that I saw in your character anyway.
Like what?
Um,
Tell me.
well,
What are my strengths?
just being friendly, um, very driven, very kind of motivated, like just kind of see a challenge in front of you. And I don't really have any doubt that if you want to, whether it's win a client or speak at an event or do whatever, if you set your mind to it, I'm pretty comfortable that you'll end up doing it. I'm not surprised in any way by anything that you're able to achieve. Um, yeah, I mean,
I'm
nothing,
glad we've got this all on video. I'll be watching this for years to come.
uh-huh. I'm looking forward to what you say about me. Um, but there's nothing that I think, oh wow, I never knew Laura was going to be a great public speaker, or I never knew Laura was going to be a good salesperson. Like I would say I saw all of that in your character.
Oh, that's good. That's good to hear. Yeah, I think probably similar. Well, I think some of your strengths have evolved. Like you've always been quite an organized person, but when I see how that can apply to business, whether it's like organizing tag away and it's organized with a real sense of fun. I feel like you created like such an amazing experience for the team, but then also you can organize the company structure in a way that is scalable for growth, and then go away and find other people who really fit the bill or like our culture, and then kind of stress test them to make sure that that all kind of fits together and that all works. And that's across our team in the UK, our team in Manila and the US, which is quite a lot to kind of have all working together. So I think that organisation kind of goes across different aspects of the business. And I think we have different degrees of warm. So like you were saying, you're working on being more warm. Like I love being around people, and like totally am happy at a networking event, and just like I love meeting new people, and like I'll text them after and be like, do you want to go for a coffee? Whereas that's just like, so you would just never do that. But what I do see is you're very observant, and then you'll remember things like all about the team, like, oh, that person, they went to this place on holiday, or oh, I thought they said they liked that type of food, and you remember these really nice things for people, which then makes them feel special and makes them feel seen. So you maybe have, I have probably lots more wide relationships, whereas you'll have smaller, closer relationships with our core team, and kind of, I think that has a lot of value as well. So what advice would you offer to other couples who are thinking about starting a business together?
I would say, like, don't be scared off by anyone that tells you that you can't do it. It's interesting, obviously, we know another couple, Gregor and Scarlett, they run a business together, but they both had much more of a career before they started their business. and it's been interesting to see how quickly they've been able to become successful. They definitely were able to go way faster than us. We kind of knocked about for 2, 3 years at the beginning, kind of figuring everything out. Whereas because they both had a good career beforehand, they were very focused and clear on exactly what they wanted their business to be. But they're also a good example of another couple that are working so successfully together. I would say just go for it, because until you try it, you're never going to know whether it's going to work for you guys. It depends on the stage of your life. If you're just having your first kids versus straight out of uni, it's like in a different situation. There's less risk. But I don't really see any reason why working with your husband or your wife is any more risky than working with a business partner. We've heard plenty of stories in the past about people that start businesses together. They have huge fallouts. It ends up in big legal kind of separation, buying each other out and whatnot. So it's not all plain sailing just because they're not your spouse. And actually, I think when they are your spouse, like we spoke about at the beginning of this chat, there's a lot you can kind of lean into each other for, and I think that benefit outweighs any potential downside. But I think it's a lot to do with kind of how your relationship is at the point you get into it.
Yeah, I had someone recently ask me about potentially getting into business with their partner. And I said the same, just I would in general say do it. I think like you will be able to shortcut a lot of communication because it's just kind of innate and you'll recognize patterns in that person you might not pick up if it's like a new business partner and everything. So probably there's deeper trust. There's lots of marriages that like or not even marriages, just relationships that there's, things can go horribly wrong as well from a trust and a money and all the same stuff that can happen with business partners. But I think you are right. I think it's unrealistic to think that doesn't change with different stages of your life. So we were very low risk getting into the business. It's different if you've both had well-paying jobs, you've been used to that, you've got mortgages and cars and children and all of that. It's the stakes feel a little bit higher, but it's a long life and you should be doing what you enjoy. And I feel actually over the last like 5 or 6 years, we've just seen a lot more of our friends and family all start to do their own things, whether that's together or individually. I think that is definitely a pattern in our kind of friend
Yeah,
and family group.
yeah. You briefly mentioned an interesting point there, which is money. And I think one of the main reasons couples split up, get divorced, whatever, is over money. And when you are both earning from the same business, from the same pot, you and I make the exact same money and we have one bank account. there's there's no hiding anything. There's no secret pot of money that the other one doesn't know about. There's no arguments over who's earning what and who spends what. It's only one pot of money that we're both working from. We're both earning the same. It's the same business bank account, and I think that eliminates finance as like a conversation topic. Really, we're completely on the same page on that front, which I think is a big thing in a relationship as well.
Yeah, no, I think that is a big thing. And actually, I think we did that before we even had the business. I think like we weren't earning very much, either of us, but we just kind of put all of our money together and that was what we had. And we were just like, okay, like there's nothing else. And yeah, that I think that actually really does help in trying not to make the financial side of it like a big deal. Like everyone's got their budget, this is what we work to. And typically you will find like you've got different spending habits, but accepting those, like I think you probably buy more stuff, but you organise like the kids' presents and things like that because you're much better at buying gifts, probably going back to that like observation and thoughtfulness, whereas I'm always the one like, what size shoe are they? And things like that. Whereas I think it's meant that we've got spending habits that nobody questions each other, which seems to work really well for us. Which was my
And
mum
we
and dad
also,
actually. They did that, and we've just got.
yeah,
I mean, I don't know what your parents did, but they're all divorced now. But
and
I don't think it was due to that.
I think we also have kind of shared interest in terms of what we want to do with our money as well. So we have a certain allocation in this investment, a certain allocation in this. So yes, like, maybe I buy more stuff on Amazon, although you bought clothes on Amazon the other day, which was surprising to me. But more Amazon packages maybe come for me, but we've already got a kind of dedicated pot that we're agreed this investment gets this much, this one. So we're on the
Yeah.
same page financially, and little fluctuations in purchases here and there is not really a big deal. It's not a deal breaker.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's true. And yeah, I think that's something that you're thinking, yeah, maybe about what you should be investing in, watching markets and all of that, whereas I wouldn't do that. So I'm glad somebody's paying attention there. What do you think your long-term dreams are for business, and how does that align with our personal goals?
I think at some point it would be exciting to take Tag Digital to an exit. An exact timeline on that, I don't know, but I think to take this thing that we started together in a tiny office in Mulgai that we were sharing with the local football team, and it stunk of sweaty shin pads and football kit, to now having a team across the UK, the Philippines, and the US, 40, 50 people, and then somebody comes along and says, you've built something amazing, I want to buy it and bring you in, be part of our group, whatever it is. I think that would be an amazing story for us to do together. I think it would be a huge sense of pride for us as a couple, and an exciting thing for the business. But yeah, like I said, I don't have a timeline on that. And then in the background, like, we're constantly talking about new businesses that we might start one day. There's always like 100 ideas of, anything, like from software products to hot sauce companies and everything in between. We're constantly coming up with different ideas. Like you touched on, so many family members have started businesses, so it's nice to be able to help them with little bits and pieces. So I like to think we have a pretty aligned vision in terms of where we want to take Tag Digital, and also what we want to do with our kind of future.
And if we were to start another business together, what advice would you give to those people based on what you've learned over the last 14, 15, 16 years?
I think starting again, there's loads of lessons that we'll have learned in Tag Digital that would mean that we kind of, what I mentioned earlier, we can expedite a lot of the stuff at the beginning, understand process a lot better, understand how to build a team quickly and efficiently and all that kind of stuff. I think it'd be important as well that you make sure that you have fun with whatever business you're doing, especially if you're doing it with your husband or your wife. You don't want it to be this, like, just drain on your energy. You want it to be like a fun thing that you guys are doing together, something fun that you're building together. And if you take it to scale, or if it stays small, it doesn't really matter. As long as you're having fun and you're not falling out over it, you're able to create a nice life for you and your family from it, then everyone's winning.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I feel like we literally learned every single thing about a business by doing it for the first time, and probably getting it wrong a few times. So like, we definitely had people who helped us along the way, like, having Jennifer as our accountant early days kept us right for the best part of 10 years, which I think is, we wouldn't have been able to do it, but she taught us a lot. But we knew nothing and are still learning all of the time. Like, there's still so much to learn, but everything was like, just learning by trying it out. And from, the team structure to marketing to sales, like, I remember being told, like, you're really rubbish at sales. And I was like, oh, okay, maybe I'm rubbish at sales then. And actually I'm like, no, that's the thing I enjoy the most, and I think I'm good at that. But we only figured that out by doing it, and then you're like, oh, people are saying yes, and then they're coming on board, but it's really, really slow and painful. Whereas I think if you were to do it again, you're like, okay, here's your roles, here's your decision, here's the structure, here's a business plan. Like, even things I think about, like doing goals and OKRs, and like, these are all things that, like, we read a book and then we're like, well, that's a good process, let's put it into the business. Or we heard an ad for Scale Up Scotland and we're like, that sounds good. You know what I mean? It was just like, looking back, you see how all of those dots kind of connect, but at the time you just generally feel completely clueless. So yeah, you would be coming in with a lot more experience, which would be good. And hopefully, you're maybe joining a business as well initially that's full of other really smart people.
Yeah, you mentioned Jennifer, and I think she was like so important to us in the early days. There's probably an argument for having a statue of Jennifer in the office because without Jennifer, probably Tag Digital would have went under at various points. Like she kept us right with so many things, helped us out so much, and probably anyone else that's thinking about starting a business, if you have a really sharp, whether it's an advisor or an accountant, because Jennifer gave us a lot more advice than just purely on the numbers. That just that one person that advises you and keeps you right is invaluable. So even if it does feel a bit like you're winging it, you're just making it up because everyone is at the beginning. If you can get, if you can find a really solid advisor, somebody to kind of hold you to account, keep you right, then I think it can be invaluable.
Yeah, I feel like there was moments where we'd be like, oh, I mean, the sales are all looking good. And Jennifer would be like, you have no cash. Like, there is no cash. How are you going to get cash? And you'd be like, okay, I need to get cash. So then we'd like phone everyone and like try and get everyone to pay their bills. But again, you only know that by like it all looked good on paper, but there was no actual money, which seems so obvious now. But then we were like, oh, it's fine. You know, the sales are good. And still now we still say like sales solves everything, which is true, but it won't solve invisible cash in the bank, which is, you know, what small businesses like ours really thrive on. But now we have a really, really capable finance team, which is amazing, but only are they there because of all the things and discipline that Jennifer put in place for us when we were still like really green and trying to figure everything out. So yeah, we definitely owe her a lot. And are there any kind of big moments that stand out for you, like along the way where you thought like this is like an amazing thing to be doing together? Anything kind of anecdotally you can share?
I think I actually spoke about this in a previous podcast where Steph interviewed us, but I think after COVID, when we went to Dubai with the team, we went to Expo 2020 site and we had hired the UK pavilion at the Expo 2020 site. I don't know how many people have actually seen it, but if you Google it, it's the most amazing building. I think for a couple of years, it seemed like everything that we had built was like it was crumbling and there was a high possibility that it was not going to come back. And I think when we went to the UK pavilion in Dubai and you were on stage speaking and the room was full and we had Google there and we had Meta there, that was a moment where I remember sitting down on the couch out in the hall. I was like, oh, thank God. Like, it feels like this is the first time in like 2.5 years it feels like things are going to be okay. So that was a big moment. Similarly, when we did the event in New York, that was also cool, kind of being beside Times Square and having our own event. Anytime we've got, you know, TikTok, Meta, Google speaking at our own events, kind of blows my mind a little bit. I guess those are the kind of main ones. There's lots of things though, like even just hiring certain people, and you're like, I can't believe this person's agreed to come and work in our team. Like it's unbelievable. But yeah.
Yeah, I think all of those things were amazing. I also feel like it was such a moment when we did our first £1 million in sales, I feel, in a month. And we had our first kind of £1 million month, and I just couldn't believe that in 1 month we generated £1 million. Whereas, like, we went years and we wouldn't even do that in the year. And then we did that in a month. And we've since done it like quite a few times. Like, we've all got a little bit blasé. But the first time we did that, kind of knew on the wedding's day, okay, I think we're going to do this by the end of the week. So we're like, right, what can we do? Got somebody in like to make margaritas, and then we hit it and we were all just like so excited. And I think, yeah, it just felt like we were really growing together as a team, and was such a big moment. And then I think just working on some of the really big pitches and deals, I find that so exciting, and doing that with a brilliant team, and just thinking this has all come from a thing that we made up, and we might be pitching for like $5-6 million contract, which it's just from a thing that we made up when we were 24, which I still find really, really exciting. And then I think you said it maybe the last time, but all being in Palma, dancing on the boat, sunset, like pulling in to the marina was just a very, very cool moment and something I feel lucky to have shared with everyone. Wrapping up, is there anything else you think that we could do better as a couple working together?
I mean, I'm sure there is. I mean, what do you think?
I think we typically have a lot of split responsibilities, but still from time to time we're like, oh, are you doing that? I spoke to so-and-so about that. Oh, did you? Did you sign off that budget? No, I didn't. Oh, I did. Like, we still have moments like that, which is nuts in what's a relatively small company. So, and I think that's just because we don't see everything that the other one is doing all day. So I don't know how you get around that. Probably clearer accountabilities across the whole team, or people knowing what to come to each of us for. Like, sometimes you end up with stuff that I think is mine and I end up with stuff and I think actually that's yours. So knowing for those grey zones who should actually be dealing with it. But it's getting rarer, I would say.
I do have one thing. I
Yeah.
think we could improve communication between ourselves during the day, because I think we're both, probably more so you than me, like guilty of like not paying attention as much when one of the other ones sends a message. So, and this is probably just because we're married, but you'll get a million Slack messages in, and you have a list of them to go through, and I can be sending something for a final check or asking a question that's important, but just because it's me, it probably doesn't get prioritized the same way it does if it's somebody in the team. And I'm sure I do the same, but I think, because I'm like, this is the third time I'm asking you this thing, if you could just get back to me on it, that would be great.
Yeah, I think sometimes I'm like, oh, well, we can always pick up at home. But then it's like, but then it gets really busy.
We go home and the kids are going nuts, screaming, and we don't have a chance to talk about it, and it's too late, and I'm like, well, I'm just going to send whatever I need to send. So I think maybe we could improve kind of communication in the office. We never actually, it's funny, like if we have something to speak about work related and it's actually just the two of us, so we'll always talk to the rest of the leadership team, but it's very, very rare that just you and I will have a meeting during the day about work. Very rare.
Oh my God. Yeah.
Almost never happens, because obviously we're like, oh, I'll talk to her about it tonight. But actually, I think to make home life a little bit easier, if we could have like a 20-minute chat occasionally during working hours, that would tick a few things off our list that we usually have to pick up at like nighttime. So I think that could be a bonus moving forward if we could do that.
Because I think sometimes you'll put a meeting in my calendar for like 8 o'clock at night to be like, we need to talk about this thing or whatever it is.
Sometimes I feel like that's the best way to get time with you, is to send you a calendar invite.
I think I got one at Christmas, like, pick Christmas presents for the children or something.
Yeah.
So, yeah. Well, do you know what? If it works. But yeah, probably during the day. Okay. Thank you, Craig. Good doing business with you, sir.
You're welcome, Laura. Anytime.
Thanks for listening to this week's episode of Tag Lab. I really hope you enjoyed it. Please make sure that you subscribe by hitting follow on whatever podcast platform you listen to so you can get the latest episode. Thanks.